Hello, this is Huma Sheikh. I'm a teacher and a writer, and today we are here to promote this book, Tales from Karachi. And it's compiled and edited by Taha Kehar. We have Taha Kehar with us, and the compiler of this anthology. And it's got flash fiction, short stories, and poems from writers from all over Karachi. So Taha, this is congratulations on your.
Congratulations to you as well, because you're also one of the contributors of this anthology. So that's a
Thank you.
that's a double congratulations.
Thank you. That was very sweet of you to promote me, publish me, and so Taha, this is your second anthology in less than a year.
Yes, it is actually.
And
Wow.
that must
When
be
you put it like that.
that must be such a beautiful feeling. So how do you feel about that?
They're both very different anthologies. The Stained Glass Window is obviously about the coronavirus pandemic, whereas this is about Karachi, and it's a relatively slim book, something that reflects on a different vein of truth, a different reality of our lives. The Stained Glass Window is more about the very public life we live with the pandemic, the stark realities. And this book, Tales from Karachi, is about our connection with our own city. So, yeah.
It looks like it's beautiful compilation. So how was the experience?
So as you know, Tales from Karachi began as an e-anthology on Instagram back in April earlier this year. I decided to set up this Instagram page, and I was hugely discouraged at the time because people thought that Karachi had become something of a literary plaything, something that was done to death. Everyone has written about Karachi. Why can't we focus on another city of Pakistan? So despite all that discouragement, I went ahead and I set up this e-anthology. And the primary focus was to find new and neglected narratives about the city. More often than not, you come across this criticism that people who write about Karachi often write about it in a very narrow, myopic manner. And I wanted to challenge that assumption to a large extent. And I also wanted to provide newer voices with that opportunity to tell their stories about the city. So that was my primary focus, and I think this is what eventually turned into this book. The e-anthology eventually made me wonder that, okay, I'm getting some excellent stories, so why not translate this from the digital realm into the print realm? So, yeah.
You've provided a wonderful platform, like a launching pad for new voices and new writers. So how has that experience been?
So it was not intended to be just for new voices. I've always believed that a platform survives best if it includes old and new voices. It so happened that newer voices emerged through this platform. I'm not going to say that they found the platform they needed, because I believe that you cannot be owed a platform. Platforms have to be earned. But everything is a stepping stone. So a lot of people sent me new stories that they had written. Old writers would send me new stories that they wrote. New writers sent me stories that they had written years before, but they didn't have the courage to have them published, or they had been discouraged by the publishing industry because it is a very stiff and competitive world. So I think the idea of bringing these two different kinds of writers, old writers, new writers together, I think that was what is the most rewarding aspect of this anthology.
Right. So, and what I've observed is that you've been carrying out competitions and and then posting stories constantly. It's been an active page, so it must have been quite taxing. But I see the enthusiasm there.
there was an enthusiasm to it as well. It was also very exhausting. So when I started out in April, I just wanted to publish stories. I decided that every day I would publish 3 stories, 3 very short stories, and because of the constraints on word count when it came to Instagram, I could only publish flash pieces. So that was also an incentive for people who don't like longer form and who can only write very tight, brief narratives. So they would send me their stories, and I thought, let's try to have some fun with this. Let's try to introduce some element of competition, because that is what the real world is all about. It's about competition. It's about how you stand in comparison to somebody else. So in addition to all these stories that I carried 3 times a day, I decided, okay, let me bring in a writer every week and have them judge specific competitions. You won our first competition, I believe. It was not a juried competition, but it was an online poll. But even so, I think the week after you won, I decided to do jury competitions. I got writers on board every week to judge competitions. We had genres like ghost stories, mystery stories, crime fiction. I forget what else there was. I think there was a poetry. I think there was horror. We repeated ghost stories again because it was a very popular thing. But I think with time I realized that weekly competitions were putting a lot of strain on me as the curator, and I decided to make them monthly competitions. We did our first season quite successfully, and soon after that we came up with this anthology. But the experience of just putting everything there and maintaining it requires a lot of work. And to do it single-handedly, I think maybe I need more people on board.
Yes,
so
because I see that it's expanding. A lot of contributions are coming your way through, as for writing. So what would you say would be were the initial challenges that you faced, as in submissions or getting
So I
judges
had
on
to,
board?
sorry to cut you off, I actually had to acclimatize myself to the idea that I was working with flash fiction. So I'm not a flash fiction writer, as you know, I'm a novelist, and I have only recently made forays into short story writing. I don't know if it's for me, but I do prefer longer form. So I'm very suspicious of flash fiction. I feel it operates within certain constraints. It's very difficult to negotiate everything, plot, characterization, setting within a very tight word limit. So I had to train myself to read flash fiction for what it is. It was more like an opportunity to teach myself how to do things differently. The other challenges I faced were purely administrative. I had to find photographs. Sometimes writers would be generous enough to send pictures, but then putting them all there, sometimes they wouldn't find pictures. And the problem was that many people had excellent stories, but they didn't have pictures to go with them. So they would not submit, thinking that was the criteria. You have to send pictures and the story. So I would ask them, why aren't you sending your stories if you have them? Oh, we don't have pictures. So I had to come up with a way of working without pictures sometimes. So, and it was something very different for me because I'm very bad with technology, and the digital sphere is pretty much alien for me. Instagram is also a very, it's a very useful tool, but it also operates on this principle of instant gratification. So if I got a longer story, I would struggle to place it on the page because I would have to divide it into 3 or 4 parts. People would lose interest after the first part, then they would not want to read part 5 and part 6. Some were part, I think, 8 or 9, and they got lost because nobody was interested. Or if they were interested, they were interested in the pictures. So that was also something that I had to recognize.
Taking this further, would you say that readers generally our nation is not reading as much as or are the readers fickle? Do they lose interest? That's why we are going more towards flash fiction. Is that what the trend is about?
Strangely enough, people like to read, but I don't think they do it on a regular basis. Some people say they don't read at all, and they're very proud of it, and I respect them for that too. But the thing is that in order to be a reader, you also have to appreciate different types of reading. So maybe that the discerning readership that writers look for, you're not going to find that. You're going to find very casual, occasional readers who may or may not want to read your book. There's also this issue of piracy. So people will happily buy a book if it's 200 rupees or 300 rupees, and will not buy a book which is 1,000 rupees because they know that it's expensive, but they will read that pirated book. So maybe it has something to do with the financial dimension of it as well. It's very difficult to actually gauge, but I do believe people are reading because people read and they consume a lot on social media. So yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So how did you feel the reader's response to be for each post or for each piece of?
So people have been reading all the stories and they've enjoyed it. They've savored every bit of it. They've given very positive feedback as well. However, I feel many people would just like your pictures and they would not actually read the story. So there were lots of people who read the winning stories in this book, and those people have actually read those on the Instagram page, presumably because they liked it. So I don't know, are people actually reading on the Instagram page, which is why I decided to just completely extricate myself from that photo element and just add to the textual element here. So that's why this book has no pictures, it just survives with the text.
So it says volume 1 for this book, so are we looking at a volume 2
Yes,
in the near future?
we are in a few months, hopefully. This was just, I would like to say just the beginning. My own introduction for this book ends with the conversation has only just begun. So at the moment I'm looking for more narratives, more stories. At the moment we're also publishing essays on the Instagram page, and we're trying to get stories that are fresh and unique. I tried to make this a bit more all-encompassing in the sense that I added poetry, I added short stories, I tried to do everything I could do with this, but there is a lot more that can be achieved, and I think that it will only happen in subsequent volumes. Okay, the publishing house, you're saying, yes.
How was the experience of working with a new publishing house?
Yes. The book has been published by Reverie, Moringa Books, which is a division of Reverie Publishers, and I think they're an up-and-coming publishing house, a very good publishing house. They are purely independent, they're doing these excellent projects, so I'm happy to have worked with them. I think the beauty of Pakistani publishing is that it's still in its early stages, so there's a lot more room for experimentation than it was before, so yeah.
Your story has been included in this as well. You have
That's not something I'm particularly proud of, but like,
not
it's
at
just
all. Not at all. You're an acclaimed writer. Would you care to read out a little bit for us, for your viewers?
I'll do it if you also read yours. So, why don't we begin with you?
Okay.
Let's begin with your story. Your story won the first competition, and it's in this third part of the book. You can read maybe a paragraph or two paragraphs, and
37, I guess.
yes, page 47.
This is going to be all edited.
It's called The Banyan Tree, and Huma Sheikh, our moderator, will read her story.
Okay. Shall I read from the beginning?
Wherever you want to.
Alright, it's The Banyan Tree, and it was submitted for the Ghost Stories of Karachi. Little Rani, sitting at Sahiba Bibi's feet, stared up at the two elderly women lost in their repertoire and continued sucking her thumb. She glanced at the tree and wondered if the cat she played with was up in the branches. Her stomach rumbled. She sniffed the soothing aroma, wafting it through the kitchen, and wondered what delicacies she would eat today. As Sahiba Bibi shuffled to her feet with the bowl of peas and made her way towards the kitchen, Rani trailed behind her, holding the corner of her dupatta in her fist. Too young to wonder about the whereabouts of her parents, Rani sought comfort in the company of these two widowed, matronly women. They were her entire world. She felt especially drawn towards Sahiba Bibi as she was warm and large-hearted and made the most delectable food that Rani ate with relish.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
It's quite an eerie story. You should be reading it if you get a copy of the book. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
Thank you, you're welcome.
What should I read? Should I?
There are two of your stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, a lot of writers sent me one story or another story. There are 2 or 3 writers who sent me 2 stories or 3 stories. I'm going to read from a story that I wrote for this anthology. This is my first proper attempt at writing flash fiction. It's called Pardon, and it's a letter that was written for this particular anthology. I've realized that this year has been a lot about rediscovering letters for me. So I'll begin. Dear Ali, I'm writing to you because I think about him, unborn yet adored, the muted passion of our brief marriage. He sneaks into my dreams with formidable ease, as if inhabiting my womb for a few months has given him the liberty to disturb my peace. I see him playing on the seesaw at our neighborhood park, his gleeful laughter reverberating to the circle of banyan trees that surround us. I didn't know that the banyan tree came into this as well. How interesting. I imagine him growing up to be a gentleman with rare courage and an astute mind. Lost in the unreality of a dream, I grab a front row seat to witness the braver moments of his fight against a cruel, unjust world. That's when I'm jolted awake by the soft melody of my alarm clock, and the nightmare begins. Upon waking, I wipe a sheen of sweat from my forehead and am instantly transported back to Karachi. At first, the city bleeds into my conscience as an overpowering regret. I chide myself for not making an attempt to dissuade you from moving the family to Karachi. I often imagine what our lives would have been like if I had voiced my reservations about cultivating a home in the city. Would he have survived?
It's a beautiful story and very well narrated by Taha. And these books are they're available online right now?
They're available on the Reverie Publishers website. They're also available on Instagram. If you're in Karachi, you can just write to us on our Instagram page and we'll deliver the books to you. And they will soon be available, I'm told, at Liberty Books. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. And so what else would the readers have to expect on your page? What else is there in store for everyone?
So we're currently doing the 2nd season of Tales from Karachi. We call it TFK, so I'll just keep referring to it as that. And at the moment we're looking for essays, we're looking for memoirs. I'm going to announce the new topic for the competition this week, hopefully by Friday. So that is something to look forward to. Hopefully that's going to go well. And obviously the 2nd volume, which is going to be a little different from this one, is a bit more, perhaps this was driven by flash fiction and very short stories. I would like to see larger narratives, something more longer, poignant. So yeah, that's basically it.
That sounds very exciting. And thank you, Taha, for being with us today. Looking forward to the next volume.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. And please do get your copy of Tales from Karachi. We'll be doing more sessions with our writers. Each of our writers will get a session of their own very soon. You will also be in one of them. So thank you for joining us for this book talk. And thank you.
Thank you so much.